Hi everyone, and welcome back to Advanced Data Mining with Power BI. Today, we're going to solve the mystery around importing files. Let's get started. Let's first talk about how to import a file from a web location. Here, we have a data file that has been made available to us through a web server that is accessible with a regular URL that you're seeing here in my browser. In order to import this into Power BI, let's walk through these steps. I'm opening Power BI with my project open, and then I'm going to select Get Data, and I'm going to go down to Web. And then my web URL field will open, and all I need to do is to take this URL from here and copy and paste it into my URL field, and let's see what happens. If the permissions are set up such that the file is accessible generally, then you will see exactly what you're seeing in this window here, namely the beginnings of the file displayed in your preview so that you can determine whether the format that you're importing is correct. And what you're seeing here is information about the encoding of the file. Here we have a UTF-8 Unicode. Then the delimiter for the file is a comma. Let's double check whether that is correct. And as we're seeing here, yes, this is a comma delimited file, a CSV file, in fact, right? So that is correct. And then we have here data type detection. So we are actually automatically detecting the data type. That's very nice, right? Based on the first 200 rows. Later on, we'll figure out how to change data types, etc. as well. So here we're going to just click load before we transform the data. We're going to do this in the second step. So I'm going to hit load, and now Power BI is going to just pull my data from the server. All right, so as you can see here, GP_table, that was exactly the data that I wanted to import. And it's right here. In order to look at the data, I'm going to go to the table view, and I'm still on my student performance table, but here is my GP table, and voila, I have acquired my data. In order to ensure that you've really imported everything, make sure to double check whether columns are blank or whether there are actual values in the column, like the credit card number column here, and here the check number column right there. So you're seeing there are values in this column. They're just not visible up here because they are further down in our data, and here they are, right? And with the credit card numbers, the same thing will be holding true. All right, it's always important to give your data a quick check over to make sure that you've really imported everything and that you haven't just imported half a file, etc. All right? But what if your file format is different? Now here, we have been sent a data dump from a database, here a MySQL database, and we're going to quickly take a look at the file itself. This is our file. It starts with create database, using the database, creating a table, and then we have all the data imports here. Okay, so this is obviously not a CSV file. How can we import the file? Well, there are a couple of ways you can do this. The first way to do this is by simply using your MySQL Workbench. Make sure that it is connected to your MySQL server. You can find out whether your server is running, because you will need the server processes, right? But under server and then checking the server status. As you can see here, the server status for me is running. If it's not running, you're going to need to start up your MySQL server on your local machine or whatever database application you choose to use, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's local, always make sure that your server is running so that you can work with server processes. And now I can do two things. I can decide to either open my file as a SQL query itself, or I can decide to open an empty SQL query and just copy and paste the contents of my file into it. I'm going to do the latter. So here is my new SQL file. I'm going to take my text here, and I'm going to copy my file right here. There you go. And then I'm going to execute this file right here, and this will build me, as you can see it's running down here, it will build me a new database schema in this case, my SQL Server. I'm going to pause the video now because this is going to take a while to import the 2000 rows here. Okay, after a long time, my schema has finally imported. Another way to get this information into my database would have been to go into the administration file and to do a data import here directly from a self-contained file. And as that self-contained file, I could have chosen my file here from wherever I have it stored. That would have been a second solution. The result would have been the same. All right, so go into the schemas. Let's double check that we have everything here. Let's go to the table and take a look at the table here. And we're seeing we have only one table, that's ms_table. And here we have the table itself, and we can see the data. And we can see, let's double check that we have all the data imported. The last row is 2850 right here. Okay, let's compare that with the last one here is the credit card, starts with 860. Let's compare this to here. 2850. There you go. Credit card starts with 860. Okay, that looks correct here. Very good. And now we have options as to how we can import this data into Power BI. The first option is, especially if we know that this is a database dump that we're going to receive only once, or like once a year or something like that, then we might as well export this into a CSV file and then import the CSV file into Power BI. Now that is the easiest way of doing this. And for that, we can use our export import function here. And then we can save our file as MS table file export, or whatever you want to do here. Save it. I'm going to save it on my desktop, and then here you're seeing the CSV extension. Can export that, and boom, done. And then I can go into Power BI and I can import my CSV file from my desktop. Here you see, there it is, the MS table file export.csv. That's what I just made. Another and more dynamic way of importing database information into Power BI is, of course, through configuring your API, because if you have new data coming in on a weekly or on a monthly basis that you need to append to your report, then you really will want a dynamic connection. And that's what we're going to look at next. To connect Power BI with my database, I need to do a little bit of work on the database backend, and I'm going to need to do a little bit of work in Power BI, of course. So let's first talk about the database. In my database here, I'm going to need to build a login and a password for Power BI to log in to my database. So I'm going to do that by users and privileges. I'm going to add an account here. My login name, I'm going to call it Power BI. Of course, it will be a little bit different depending on what your organization's standards are for logins and for passwords. All right, here we go. And then for this account here, I'm going to set my maximum queries, and I'm going to set my maximum connections here, concurrent connections, sure thing. Okay, now we get to set the administrative roles, and then we're going to pick the schema privileges. So as for the administrative roles, what I want my Power BI user to be is, well, it's got to read from the database. What kinds of permissions does it need to have? Does it need to be a database designer, creating and reverse engineering any database schema? Probably not. But I'm going to give it DBA privileges, and then I can edit the privileges specifically here. And all I want to do really for it is to not create anything, but all I want it to do is, I don't want it to drop any database. I want it to execute, and I want it to, don't want it to insert, I want it to select here, right? Show databases, show view, shutdown. I don't want to do super. I certainly don't want to do trigger and updates. I don't need either. Processes, references, reload, replication client, replication slave. I don't need all that for my Power BI user, and don't need it to grant options to any kind of user, right? So I'm really building a custom role here. All right, so having said that, I think that's it. So I'm going to make sure that my password matches. Okay, so, and now I have my custom administrative role here, and for my schema, I can now add an entry if I want to have a selected schema here to which I want to restrict my Power BI administrator, and here I'm going to use Musinidero Silvera because that is this here, and for that he's going to get select and show view rights here. We're not going to give him any DDL rights because we don't need that. Okay, so all right, so now that we've set up the database side with the connectivity information that we want Power BI to use to log in and get the data, we need to add that data, that information to Power BI, and that's what we're going to do next. So we're going to go into Get Data, and then from there, we're going to go into the database screen here. You're seeing you have all sorts of databases here to which you can connect. Those are the connectors that are part of Power BI. I'm going to connect into my SQL database, which I'm running locally. And for that, I'm going to need to specify the name of the server on which the database is running and the database itself. The name of the server is what I will find in my host information here. So I'm going to add that. And then I'm going to add the name of the database, namely Musinidero Silvera. Good. So my server first. And then the name of my database. All right. Now you should be seeing a screen now to use your database user to log in. Remember that Power BI user and that password that we built that will log into your database. I have hidden that here, and what you will be seeing next is after a successful login, you will be seeing here the connection to your database. You will be seeing the table, and here is the preview of your table. And we have the option now, again, as we did previously in the Power Query editor, to transform the data first before loading, or just to load the data. I'm going to load the data because I want to see how the data is connecting. You just saw it connected to my database, and here is my data in Mosinho da Silveira. There you go. All right, here we are. You see? Good. I'm going to double check here. Again, we are supposed to have all of these columns here. It looks like we have them all. We're seeing here that the IDs are not sorted the way that we would want them to be sorted. In order to get a quick overview, we know my last ID is 2850, and we know that the credit card number starts with 860. Well, there it is. Okay, and this is now a live database connection, so it will pull, depending on how I configure it later on, it will pull live data whenever I choose to refresh it, or to whatever I choose to set the refresh interval in Power BI. And there you have it. Now we have added data from two different sources. We have added the GP table here from a web source, and we have added the Mosinho da Silveira MS table from a live database source. Thank you for watching.